Hello and welcome to another edition of the Steelers Depot live stream. I am Alex Kozora. Joining me as always is Dave Bryan from SteelersDepot.com for the next hour, answering all of your Steelers questions, or at least as many as we can over the next hour. Dave, our first live stream since the 2025 NFL Draft. I know we've already had plenty of reaction to the picks, but we'll talk about it with you guys tonight. Dave, thanks for being here.
Happy Monday. Test. We're using a new setup, so hopefully people can let us know. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're going to do a quick audio test, make sure the chat can hear Dave and myself, because we're on a slightly new setup, so I think we're okay, but if you guys in the chat can just let us know if you hear Dave and myself and the audio sounds clear and loud. Once we do that, we'll get to your Steelers questions. So, got Mike here, Daniel Berry, a couple more people in the chat, and so if we could just get a quick audio confirmation, we'll get going.
Check.
Steven says we can hear, so I think we're good. Yeah, no more Skype. Skype is officially gone, which is how Dave and I connected for these calls, and so we're on Microsoft Teams. Easy setup, though, and everything sounds good, says Mike, and says Kyle and Steven. So we'll dive on in. Reminder, you guys want a guarantee of your question being asked and answered by Dave and myself, you can send us a super chat and move to the front of the line. No obligation. We appreciate those all the same. So pretty quiet weekend for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but we'll talk about whatever you guys have to react to post 2025 NFL Draft. So we'll start off here with our friend Mike Adesso, who says, today is a good day to thank whomever is your God for one Christopher Lynn Boswell. Is Tucker a future Hall of Famer? What does Boz need to get in someday? And that comes on the heels of the Baltimore Ravens releasing longtime kicker Justin Tucker. They cited football reasons and had a pretty glowing statement from GM Eric DeCosta about Tucker's career in Baltimore, the 7-time Pro Bowler, 5-time Pro Bowler, or All-Pro, I should say. But obviously, it feels like one big reason for this release is because of the sexual assault and harassment allegations that came out shortly after the season ended. So, for Tucker being a Hall of Famer, not looking great. Stuff for kickers to get in, and given Tucker's allegations, will be even more difficult for Boz. Gonna need some Super Bowl winning kicks probably to get Boz in the Hall, Dave.
There's only 4 kickers in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm Googling, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Jan Stenerud, Morton Anderson, Lou Groza, and George Blanda. Kickers don't get much love, do they, over time? And without a doubt, during his span up until really this past season, Justin Tucker... If anybody was on path to get to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it was. You do have to wonder how the rest of this, stuff maybe shakes out for him, and if voters can keep it on the field and off the field and that kind of thing there. So stay tuned as far as the status. But the fact that there's only 4 kickers enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and as good as Tucker's been, as you stated, how many Super Bowl kicks does he have? But when it comes to Chris Boswell, it might take just that. I mean, he's obviously been around the league a long time. In my opinion, he is one of, if not the best kicker in the NFL currently, especially coming off of the season that he had last season. You'd have to imagine he has at least one more year left in him, 2025, and possibly even 2 more years. So could that be a determining factor within that? But I just can't help but stare at this fact that only 4 kickers are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Now, Adam Vinatieri, I assume, will become a 5th someday because of the Super Bowl kicks he's had, and some of those other names you mentioned, Blanda and Groza, I believe, played other positions beyond just pure kicker, so there's kind of even a slight caveat to those names as well. But, Tucker was probably borderline before all the allegations, great kicker of the era. The resume I mentioned, 7-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro. But I think you factor this in, this might tip the scales to him not making the Hall. But we'll see what the NFL investigates, what any punishment, sorts itself out as, and go from there. But for Boz, great Steelers kicker, probably will go down as the greatest Steelers kicker in history if he's not there already. And there's a case to be made that he would be. but Hall of Fame, don't see it happening.
And the thing with him, as we've mentioned a few times on the podcast this offseason, the thing to watch for with him is, will he get any money pushed forward into 2025? He's got 2 years left on his contract, so an extension would kind of be out of the norm from unless they break some precedents here. But what they could do is either move some money ahead or give him some more cash, as an additional signing bonus to at least make him the highest paid kicker as far as 2025 cash value goes. I'll be surprised if they don't do that, to be quite honest with you. But it's obviously not guaranteed, but it is something to look for here.
For sure. Just a reminder, if you guys could like the stream as well, would really appreciate that to get as many of Steelers Nation into the chat. And let's now go to Brian Jonker, who says, if Mason starts with a losing streak, will we see Howard, that's Will Howard, of course, start after the bye week? Well, Brian, I'm still under the belief and assumption Aaron Rodgers will be starting week 1, which puts Mason Rudolph as the number 2, and then Will Howard at best at number 3. I don't think Pittsburgh has any intention on playing Will Howard this year unless they absolutely have to because of injury.
I would agree with that. And every time we get in sort of these conversations of a drafted, young quarterback and all, I can't help but go back in my head to 2004 when Ben Roethlisberger was drafted, and to hear Kevin Colbert tell the story several times that their intentions were for Ben Roethlisberger to not play in 2004. And during the summer, Charlie Batch had a knee injury that ended up shelving him at the time, and then Tommy Maddox, second game into the season or whatnot, had that injury, and then lo and behold, in comes Ben Roethlisberger, and the rest, as they say, is history there. So I'm with you. I think everybody's still under the assumption right now that Aaron Rodgers is going to sign with the Steelers, and if for some reason he retires or doesn't, I kind of envision them maybe turning their sights to see about to maybe look into maybe Kirk Cousins. But if it got far enough down the line where it ended up being Mason Rudolph, then yeah, you might be a couple of early season losing streak away from Will Howard seeing action. But I think all of this right now, until we find out what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers, we can't go much further than that.
Chat, let me know what you guys think. This is a good question. If Rodgers is not in Pittsburgh for whatever reason you want to ascribe that to, who would you rather see start week 1, Mason Rudolph or Kirk Cousins? It sounds like Dave, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, you would take Cousins. I would take Rudolph.
I would look into, especially, look, even depending on the money and what you could get the Falcons to eat and all like that, I would be intrigued by Kirk Cousins being, full season removed from that Achilles and all like that. He was playing good football, before the Achilles and all, and was it a bad system fit, and was he not 100%? I mean, you look at that Atlanta Falcons game against the Steelers last year to open the season, right? That wasn't Kirk Cousins.
But how much better did it get? It got a little bit better for a while, then it completely fell off again.
Yeah, and it was bad enough that they were willing to turn to a rookie, right? And essentially, try to save their season that way. So there obviously would be question. But I mean, how much, Aaron Rodgers, obviously, I kept saying all last season, man, don't sleep on the Jets, man. Don't sleep on the Jets. And I was wrong. It was a good reason to sleep on the Jets. Aaron Rodgers didn't play his best football, and how much better would Aaron Rodgers be in 2025, assuming he's healthy and all, than Kirk Cousins a year removed from the Achilles? What's the difference there?
Well, yeah, let me ask you just briefly, how big of a gap is that in terms of skill and play between Rodgers and Cousins as passers?
I mean, all I can remember is the Kirk Cousins prior to the injury, and that's obviously a while ago now. But
even in current form, just Cousins today versus Rodgers today.
I mean, I would obviously, because of experience and ability to read defenses, and Rodgers can still fling it with the best of them. He's still got a good arm, so I would give the edge obviously to Rodgers.
Right. I think there's a noticeable gap between Rodgers and Cousins, even while I would acknowledge that Rodgers is declining physically. I think he's still well ahead of where Cousins is at and what he has left in the tank, especially if Cousins is forced to play outdoors in Pittsburgh in December after playing in, domes and warmer climates throughout most of his NFL career. All right, let's now go to our next question. Appreciate you guys being here. Reminder to like the stream and subscribe and check out the site on screen, SteelersDepot.com. Got Mike Odessa with a second question. With Eddie Faulkner's son getting a tryout, and surprisingly not Dino Tomlin, I was wondering if they've ever had another son of a current coach on staff as a tryout or even in minicamp. That is a good question, Mike. I was trying to rack my brain quickly before I read it off as to any examples. It may have happened before. I can't think of anything. Dave, any examples of son of coach on the roster in any capacity before?
I'm trying to rack my brain now, and I'm not coming up with anything.
There's been
off the top of my head.
There's been some minicamp invites. Like Craig Wolfley's nephew, I think, was a tryout guy a couple of years ago. Kevin Green's son, I believe, was a tryout guy a couple of years ago, but nothing related to coaching personnel directly on staff. I can't think of a name. If chat knows somebody, feel free. There probably could be, and certainly could be an example of that out there, but nothing coming to mind right now. And we'll see what happens with Eddie Faulkner. I wasn't super surprised that Dino Tomlin was not but given a tryout by Pittsburgh. And I'm betting him going to Tampa is a little nod from Todd Bowles down there, where Tomlin got his NFL start back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, next question comes from Mike Miller. A simple one. Hi, Steelers Nation. Is Will Howard a good throwing the ball? That's what he says. Is Will Howard, I'm going to assume basically, to summarize it, is Will Howard a good passer? And I think he is. I think he's got touch and accuracy and a feel for the game a lot of rookie quarterbacks don't have coming out of college.
I will tell Mike Miller that I don't know if he was able to see the deep ball contextualization from 2024 that I put up in the last week or so. I thought his deep ball was okay. A lot of that stuff was outside the numbers with him. Not the biggest arm per se. What did I say? The longest air yards attempt that he had all last season, I think, was 45 yards, and that's 45 yards past the line of scrimmage in the air. He completed that. While the ball doesn't necessarily, I guess, hang in the air, it's got an arc to it. It's got more along the lines, I guess, of a moon ball. It doesn't go per se on a rope the way kind of like Justin Fields threw it. I've looked at some of his far hash throws, and it looks adequate enough there. I'd like to see him maybe speed it up a little bit. I think maybe a couple of times he's a little late getting some of those throws off. Long and short, does he have a good enough arm, I think, to at least be a quality backup in the NFL? I think yes. Now, as I was telling Alex before we got on here, I now have, as of this afternoon, all of the play-by-play data from Will Howard from every pass drop back from the 2024 season. And it's all broken down by center of the field, right, left, air yard distance, and all like that. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go game by game, starting with the game against Akron. And we're going to do drop back or pass attempt contextualizations of every throw throughout the 2024 season. It's obviously going to take several posts, but we got nothing but time this time of the offseason. And then we'll wrap all that up with at that point, I will have watched every single throw by Will Howard from 2024, and they'll be able to all sum it up in one gigantic post. The short answer is I think his arm's good enough, but within that, I think the overall arm strength might be some of the reason why he fell like he did.
Yeah, and I just, like I mentioned earlier on podcasts and other comments, where I think you've seen this divide in quarterbacks, which has been my philosophy for a long time on quarterbacks. Either take one early or really don't take one at all, or in the NFL's case, you're taking a couple guys late. No quarterback, or very few quarterbacks, went earlier than expected. Cam Ward was number 1 overall. Dart at 25 or whatever spot that was about expected. Shuck early second round, either at expectation or a bit below. And the rest of them, really fell. Milroe, Shador, Will Howard, Kyle McCord, Quinn Ewers. The only guy that probably went earlier than expected was Dylan Gabriel from Oregon, who went in the third round of Brown's first quarterback selection. So I think that was probably one reason, just in a general big picture sense of why Howard fell. We got Captain Spartan here in the chat tonight. He says draft was awesome in Green Bay. Hopefully Pittsburgh is like Green Bay and Kansas City and actually gives us somewhere to sit, not like Detroit where we just all crowded in downtown. So Captain Spartan, it sounds like you were you at every single draft event, KC, Green Bay, Detroit, and sounds like you'll be in Pittsburgh for 2026. So yeah, looking forward to that. The countdown is on. It's been officially passed down from Green Bay to Pittsburgh. They had that ceremony on day 3 of the draft, and so should be a lot of fun next year, Dave.
Captain Spartan's a better man than I am to be able to go to those and be in those throngs of crowds. I'll tell you that.
Brian Jonker says, you know how Mason worked on his pocket presence and is good at it now. Can he fix his tendency to stare down his number one read? I have to dig into that more of how much an issue that was, how the nine interceptions occurred last year in Tennessee. I didn't see it as a potentially big issue the way that, as you said, Brian, his pocket presence or lack thereof was a problem early in his career he rectified. But certainly I think it's something that can be fixable for any quarterback.
I think he, at this stage of his career, though, he kind of is what he is, right? And whoever the quarterback's going to be this season is going to need a good running game to go off of. Going to have to be able to at least throw the ball down the field to some degree to the receivers and hopefully attack the middle of the field a little bit more. If memory serves me, Rudolph had a couple of real questionable throws last year, and his interceptions and touchdowns were about equal, weren't they, in Tennessee?
It was the exact same, I believe, 9 touchdowns to 9 picks.
Right. Can you win if you have the offensive line and you have the running game and you have above average defense? Can you win games with Mason Rudolph in 2025 as your starter? The short answer to that is yes.
It depends on what you mean. You can do what Pittsburgh has been doing, which is win 8 to 10 games, be in the wild card hunt, maybe sneak your way into the playoffs as that 6 or 7 seed, and then get bounced in the first round. So if you want what you've been getting, then sure, I think Rudolph is capable of doing that. He can run your offense exactly the way a coach wants his offense run. Can he elevate an offense? I don't think so. All right, next question comes from Travis Pick, who says, hey guys, I haven't paid enough attention to know if you have already covered questions about Steelers players, so what is each of your prized Steelers memorabilia that you own? Dave, what is your prized possession Steelers related?
I don't know. I got a couple of things in here that Alex gave me. I've got a signed mini helmet, Pro Football Hall of Fame from Franco Harris. Got a Minka Fitzpatrick nameplate from his locker from a couple of seasons ago. I'm not as avid of a collector as I used to be. I've got an old I've got an old autographed mini helmet from Cordell Stewart when I met him when I was in Savannah. Went to a sports bar that was opening up on the military base outside of Savannah, and they had Cordell Stewart and another player. My memories escape me who the other player was. He was a fringe roster player, but a friend of Cordell's at the time, and both those guys were there, and got to go out to that event and got a signed mini helmet of his. Let's see. You got me a Jerry Mullins signed picture as well too here in my office. I do have two seats I'm looking at right here in my office out of the old Three Rivers Stadium. Nice.
How'd you get those? I mean, I know they were kind of selling chairs. Them, but
my wife years ago found them online somewhere from memorabilia shop, and came with authenticity and all like that, and so I got those sitting here in the office, and I got those cool little slats that you install them on, and they just sitting here underneath my TV right here in my office.
You ever sit in them? Get back to the old Three Rivers field?
I sit in them to put my shoes on because I'm old and I can't be bending.
Okay.
I can't be bending over and all like I used to from the waist down. So I sit down to put my shoes on. So occasionally I'll sit in them that way. And I don't necessarily envision myself being in Three Rivers at the time, but I do sit in them.
They're serving a purpose. We'll take it either way.
Yeah.
There you go. For me, and I mentioned this I think a time or two before, my Chidi Iwoma jersey, the game-worn jersey that I bought at Steelers training camp. They sell some generally practice squad player stuff in kind of the corner of their little stand there at St. Vincent at Latrobe, and bought that on like the last day of training camp. They had a sale, and I got it framed, and that's down in my kind of Steelers area. So that's probably the number one there. So good question. We appreciate the question there. That was from Travis.
James Harrison sent me an autograph picture as well too. So
did he?
I got
nice.
Couple years ago.
Very cool. All right, next question. And Tommy says, press that like button. Appreciate it, Tommy. Thank you for being here. Thanks to everyone who is here in the chat. Let's see what else we have. Joey Jr., Alex, what this I heard about George Pickkins wanted a trade during the draft, but was talked out of it. I have not heard that. I've heard that Pittsburgh fielded some calls, potentially made some calls themselves on a Pickkins deal, but obviously nothing got done. And while Pickkins still could probably rattle some cages and force his way out of Pittsburgh if he wanted to, I think the odds of a Pickkins trade is severely dwindled, at least in terms of the start of week one here post-draft. You trade Pickkins now, how do you replace that spot? Would have already been tough during the draft, and certainly a whole lot harder post-draft, where Pittsburgh did not draft a receiver. They signed Robert Woods afterwards, so I don't think a Pickkins trade is happening until maybe the deadline at the earliest, if at all, Dave.
Yeah, I do think there was some level of plausibility and or probability up until we got into the third day of the draft of maybe Pickkins being dealt at the very least. I would imagine the Steelers maybe fielded some calls, but once we got into day 3 of the draft, as we talked about, that the likelihood dropped dramatically that anything would happen, at least during the draft. And at this point now, I think barring Pickkins just coming right on out at this point saying, trade me, get me out of here, I think he's going to be in Pittsburgh. I would think that the thing to watch maybe moving forward would be, how come are the Steelers still in it come trade deadline time? If they are, and obviously if Pickkins is doing all the things he should be doing as part of the offense, then I would imagine he stays for for hopefully the stretch run and hopefully a playoff run and all, and then allowed to potentially walk after the season. However, if the Steelers are not having a good first half of the season and look to be long shots to make the playoffs, maybe something happens where a team comes calling as looking to add Pickkins as that last piece for their own Super Bowl run.
Fair. We will see. It'll be interesting to see what Pickkins does or does not do with OTAs coming up, minicamp in just over a month from now. Would not really expect Pickkins to be visible and make an appearance at voluntary OTAs, but we'll see. And then certainly at training camp, does he hold in? Does he go through the motions the way that Pat Fryermuth and Najee Harris did last year? Time will tell.
Now, this means absolutely nothing, just the general sleuthing stuff that we like to do. I don't believe I've seen any pictures in phase 1 or phase 2 on Steelers.com of any of the photos. I don't think I've seen George Pickkins. If anybody, correct me if I'm wrong, chat, if you guys have seen him, but I don't. And look, these are voluntary in nature, and you can't get on the guy for not being there. But just as an observation, I don't think I've seen Pickkins taking part in any of phase 1 or I think phase 2 started today, didn't it?
They're in phase 2. I believe that was today. I couldn't tell you if that happened last week, but they are in phase 2 of the off-season program. So yeah, I have not seen Pickkins at all. I imagine if he was, that would have been mentioned by somebody somewhere along the way. By you, for sure. Or somebody at Steelers Depot. So don't think he's there. But even last year, he was only at OTAs, I think, for part of the time. So, I think the mandatory minicamp will be more telling about Pickkins' stance and status going forward. Have a generous $5 super chat from Jay Kula, who says, how much are the Steelers relying on the 2026 draft to get their quarterback, and is that realistic? I think it's certainly the play that they're making in their minds, knowing that nothing's guaranteed and you have no idea what the landscape will look like next year in your own quarterback situation, in the draft class where you're picking, all of those million variables. But I think that's their intent to hopefully pursue that quarterback in 2026. Is it realistic? It is, but again, you don't know who's going to be available, where you're picking, and just what things will look like, 10 months from now, let's say. So certainly would be it's going to be top of mind for them. Will it happen? We'll see.
Yeah, all I can say is start trying to acquaint yourself with this next quarterback class, and all the eyes will obviously be on Arch Manning, and will he or won't he do enough or play enough and end up declaring, and will the top five will the consensus top five at this point right now still be the consensus somewhat top 4 or 5 come? I mean, it's obviously plausible that come first round of the 2026 NFL draft that the Steelers take a quarterback. I think that's really, really plausible, especially with the kind of the draft capital they've accumulated to this point. Most of that obviously being potential compensatory draft picks, and will they add to that? Via obviously we just talked about George Pickkins, and will they end up trading George Pickkins and get draft capital? Who knows? But it is a plausible idea that the Steelers draft a quarterback in first round of the 2026 draft, as least as we sit here right now today.
Agreed. I think no one would be surprised if that ultimately was the route that Pittsburgh took, but a lot of variables to consider along the way. Any reaction, Dave, to the Steelers rookie jersey numbers for the draft picks being released today? We knew about Derek Carman's 99 shortly after the draft. Any thoughts on the other digits for the other 6 rookies?
I don't get as excited about that as most. I know a lot of people like that stuff, but I don't have any main takeaways for it.
All right. Chat, any thoughts, any numbers you like, don't like? I kind of like Sawyer keeping number 33. I know that's unusual for an edge guy, but just kind of suits him. Of course, the jersey he wore at Ohio State. AB says, has an edge as stiff as Sawyer, speaking of which, ever worked out for the Steelers? Just looks like a wasted pick with limited upside, having a hard time seeing a prior comparison to any edge that's worked out for us. It does feel like, to AB's point, that Pittsburgh has had more success with athletic, toolsy edge rushers, but Dave, you just went through the sack compilation and contextualization on Jack Sawyer. What are your thoughts on his flexibility, bendability, and how that fits in Pittsburgh?
Well, first and foremost, how flexible and athletic was Lamar Woodley?
That's true. He was probably bigger and stronger than Sawyer, but fair comparison.
All right, and he obviously, it would have been interesting to see what happened with Woodley had he not had, what was it, hamstring with him?
Yeah, he had weight issues and soft tissue results from that.
But I mean, him and James Harrison together put up the fantastic, both had double-digit sacks and all like that. I mean, how would you classify old school Mike Vrabel? I know it's a lazy, easy comp, but I can see some of that, kind of remembering back to Vrabel's playing days. Here's the thing that stuck out, and I talked about this on the podcast earlier today, and hopefully it's on the site. The post didn't do as good as I thought it would do, but I mean, it's up there still if anybody wants to look at it. I looked at all the sacks from Captain Jack there from his whole entire college career. I thought it was an okay sack reel. A lot of power. I think he's good with his hands, uses his hands good. He's got that swipe down. Seems like he has pretty much a plan. I don't know that I saw a whole lot of counter stuff with him, so that might be something. I think he tries to do a little bit of that dip and rip sometimes. He obviously doesn't have that ankle flex on, to turn the corner, especially nothing close to like what Nick Herbig has. But I did find myself going back, and I rewatched and I put this together, and it's on YouTube for those that want to look at it, the TJ Watt college sack compilation. production, and obviously a shorter compilation because of he came out of a junior and all like that, and I think he had the injuries at Wisconsin. That sack reel didn't necessarily blow me away when I put it together, and it was good. It just it wasn't anything like, oh my God, do you believe this kind of thing. And we all know what T.J. Watt became. Now within that, who was it? ESPN and Seth Walder put up the what was it? The 3-year sack prediction.
Mm-hmm.
And what did he have Jack as with that?
Is it 7? I forget exactly the methodology, but it was something about 7 sacks was the prediction, I want to say.
I will tell you this: a lot of stuff right after the draft here and all. A lot of focus has been on Jack with talk about his ability to play against the run. I don't think enough gets said about his ability to rush a passer.
I agree. I think he's a different style. I think he's a power rusher with a good plan that's not going to bend the edge, is not going to win with a lot of speed, outside kind of dip and rip moves, but a guy that's going to be smart, not going to rush up the arc. I think his ceiling's limited. I think he's a number 3 rotational guy that can play the run, set the edge, play hard, and give you a good power as a pass rusher. So I understand AB, the commenter's point about that. I don't think the upside is incredibly high. I don't think he'll be Nick Herbig, where he's super efficient and a consistent threat off the edge. They're different body types, different styles. So I hear it, but I think if you're a smart pass rusher that knows the type of rusher you are, I think Jack Sawyer knows how he wins, then you'll be effective and create a higher floor for yourself.
How would you describe, say, like a Kyle Van Noy?
Yeah, I was thinking about that because Sawyer, like Van Noy, lacks that length, and that was an issue that even Marcus Golden had in Pittsburgh recently in his short time. Of course, his career was mostly in Arizona, so that's kind of a little comp I have, is a little maybe Marcus Golden-like for Jack Sawyer. Maybe Golden was a little bit bendier around the edge, could kind of rip through a bit more effectively. On Van Noy, I don't know. I think Van Noy was a little more athletic than what Sawyer is. Van Noy played more off-ball linebacker. He kind of wore a lot more hats than what Sawyer is likely to do at the NFL level.
And obviously, if things go the way we hope they go with health-wise, Sawyer's not going to see a lot of, I can envision him getting, depending on game and situation and game flow, anywhere from 5 to 10 snaps a game as a rotational guy. And barring anything happening in the next couple of years to one of those 3, Watt, Highsmith, or Herbig, we might not see a whole lot of Jack.
I think out of the gate, you're right. Number 4 rusher, 5 to 10 snaps, but all it takes is one injury. And when was the last time Pittsburgh went through the whole season with all their edge guys being healthy? Certainly Did not happen last year. Watts battled some stuff recently. You've missed him for larger chunks of time. So I imagine at some point, unfortunately, someone's going to go down, miss at least a game or two, and Sawyer's your number 3, now playing 25 to 30 plus snaps per game. So I think we'll get good exposure to him sooner than later.
And look, you could have, depending on where you're at with Nick Herbig against the run in certain situations and rotational needs, you could very well see Jack out there instead of Herbig in some run situations.
Could you see it where their backups are going to basically play sides? Sawyer's the backup to Watt on the left side and Herbig's the backup to Highsmith on the right side? Is that possible?
I could see that, but we talked a lot about how Jack primarily was a left side guy at Ohio State, and even though Herbig has experience playing both sides, Herbig does seem a little bit more effective on the right side, right?
I think most, if not all, of his sacks have come on the right side, I believe, right? So maybe that's how they divvy up the snaps, and that also allows the rusher to focus more on just how to beat your tackle. If you have to play both sides, you got to, and you still study both, but you then have to dedicate more film time to, okay, how does the left tackle win? What are his strengths and weaknesses? How does the right tackle win? Same thing. Keep it more focused on just one side. It works both ways. It works for the opponent as well, but we'll see. The point is, I think Sawyer can still have success despite not being that super athletic, bendy type, but I do think it's going to cap his upside and not turn him into a starter level guy in all likelihood. Good question there, AB. We appreciate that. Just a reminder to like the stream. Would appreciate that as well. Let's get to Captain Spartan, who says, so should I record every Clemson, Penn State, South Carolina, and LSU game this year to scout for our quarterback Indiana and Oklahoma occurred too? Yeah, certainly going to be scouting those quarterbacks. And I think as you're alluding to at the end, there's always some unknown guy that comes out. This time a year ago, no one's talking too much about Jackson Dart. No one even knows who Tyler Shuck is because he was hurt so much at Oregon and Texas Tech. And so somebody's going to be emerging at some school somewhere that we're not even considering right now, but talking about as a potential day one option for 2026.
Captain Spartan, do you have a YouTube TV subscription? If you do, you can do what I've done for 2 seasons now. Set that sucker to record every single college football game. You'll be amazed how many games that you get, and you'll never be able to go through them all, but you will be able to, like all the major ones that he just listed there: Clemson, Penn State, South Carolina. You'll be able to see most of them if you do that. YouTube TV is one of the better inventions in my lifetime, if you ask me, just for the sheer fact that and I think it keeps your recordings for like 7 months or so, 8 months or something like that. So set that sucker to record every single NCAA college football game, and if you need to, you can just do a search real quick and pull them up and watch them.
There you go, unlimited storage. And so not an ad, but we appreciate YouTube TV all the same. Another question from AB. I just want to get to this one quickly. Odds Roman Wilson is on the 53 5 months from now. He's putting it at 50-50 on Roman making the initial roster, Dave.
Boy, I would like to think that his chances are higher than that. I mean, if you're going to give up on a guy after just 5 offensive snaps, now obviously he's got to stay healthy, right? I mean, he's got to make it through a full training camp. He's got to make it through his first full preseason. But for the draft capital that you have invested in that kid at this point, man, obviously we've got the whole offseason to go here, but I would put his chances at much, much, much greater than 50%.
Same. It's very rare, although not unheard of, I don't believe, for a third-round pick in Pittsburgh to not make it through their second season. I'm trying to think, did Willie Reed get through his second season, at least at the start of it? I think so. So Willie Reed can make it, even though it's different eras and apples and oranges on situations. My concern is less about Roman Wilson making the 53. I think he does, but what is his impact? What is his role? Even if he's ahead of Robert Woods, which I don't believe is a guarantee right now, let the summer sort those things out. Is he your number 4 receiver and number probably 6 target behind the 3 receivers in front of him? Pat Freiermuth, the running backs in a run-heavy offense. If somebody gets hurt, obviously roles can expand, but how much action is Roman Wilson really going to see, even assuming he does make the 53?
And if let's say you kept 6 receivers in total and everybody on the depth chart stayed healthy and Robert Woods made the roster, it's not like Roman Wilson's going to offer you anything in special teams. So could he be an early season inactive while he continues to get his feet wet?
Absolutely, because Ben Skoronek's going to dress for special teams, and Robert Woods has probably a little defined value, a little different defined value as a blocker and maybe some big package stuff. Skoronek can do the same. So yeah, I just I want to see Roman Wilson healthy. Want to see him in a game, and besides the 5 snaps last year, get him through a full training camp. So kind of clean slate this thing. I don't want to prejudge it too much, but I just see that path being tough. Reginald Rivers says, how many undrafted free agents will make the Steelers roster? We'll see. Have to get eyes on them. In my way too early roster prediction, I put 2 down. DJ Thomas Jones, the tight end / fullback from South Alabama, the Ole Miss recruit, and Aiden Williams, the offensive tackle, probably kicks inside the guard from Minnesota Duluth. But it's a good undrafted crop. There's Sebastian Castro from Iowa, who probably will turn some heads and gain some buzz this summer with his aggressive style of play. There's the receivers and Rock Taylor, although his path probably tougher. I like J.J. Galbraith a lot from South Dakota, the tight end. So I imagine we'll see 1 or 2 names make it.
As we sit here right now, I'm with you. I think potentially maybe one of the tight ends, either Galbraith or DJ Thomas Jones, would be at least betting would have the better odd. Not saying they're locked by any means, but would have the better odds and the easiest path.
Yeah, I think Galbraith could still have some difficulty. Is not a super apt inline blocker. There's some effort. He did some of it at South Dakota, but I would probably say Thomas Jones, maybe Williams for a lack of depth on that O-line, and then Castro could also impress. I think that's a guy that certainly could have been drafted, so that guy may wiggle his way onto the roster too.
Right. A real physical guy, and especially if he stands out on special teams and makes some play. We've seen in the past guys that splash on special teams during the preseason can somehow find their way onto the rosters.
Absolutely, and it's worth mentioning that Deshaun Elliott, Juan Thornhill, and Miles Killenbrew are all entering the last year of their deal this year. Captain Spartan says, I asked this a long time ago, but I'll ask again. How do you stand out from the rookie tryouts with it only being 3 days? Feels like if you make one mistake, you won't be one of the UDFAs that make it. So I assume he's saying more tryouts and not undrafted free agents under contract. Mike Tomlin gave that answer either last year or 2 years ago. I'm trying to think exactly what he said. I'm probably more paraphrasing, but great conditioning, be mentally sharp. As you said, don't make those mistakes and make a play. I talked to, this was a while ago now, Marcus Tucker, the receiver who was a tryout guy that hung out in the practice squad for a couple seasons, and he told me he made one great catch in practice and said he felt like he caught his contract with that play. So good conditioning, be assignment sound, make a play. That's the path.
Just make it and at least have a great article. Have a great sense of at least having a grasp of what your assignment is, because this is a whirlwind situation here with these guys coming in and having to try to prove themselves, and those that seem like they can grasp the stuff too, that's got to play in their favor.
For sure. Who can process and digest information on the fly. May not be perfect, but don't make the mental error. Don't blow an assignment. Don't false start. Don't do something dumb. If you make a mistake, don't repeat it. That's kind of the path. So we'll see. There's some open roster spots right now. We'll see who gets signed, if anybody. Mike Adesso, Alex, with the Steelers pulling the big okie doke on you with their interest in safeties, is there anything we can learn from this? Seems the Blues Clues is getting more challenging. I'm not sure if it's more challenging. I certainly did tout the interest in safety earlier in the pre-draft process, but in my final mock, I had a safety in the 7th round with Donovan McMillan. So, yeah, I kind of cooled off on that a little bit. But I think the Blues Clues, in some ways, might have gotten easier to figure out under Omar Khan. The Steelers' first-round pick has been a pre-draft visitor in all 3 years under Khan. So that path may be getting clearer, even more so than it was before for the pro days.
Arthur Smith was at the Ohio. Not that he probably wasn't going to be at the Ohio State Pro Day, but look, I think these major programs mean a lot. I think we saw the gravitation towards obviously the Big Ten heavy this year. I didn't feel more. The biggest question I had is which one of the guys, they're especially when it came down to what was the conversation with the defensive tackle? Is it going to be Grant or is it going to be Derek Harmon? That's where my mind was in kind of the as putting my final mock draft together. I think we all agreed that they were going to take a running back at some point. Just by looking at the visitor list, I think we were all fairly sure they were going to take a defensive lineman at some point. They brought in a couple of outside linebackers for visit, which kind of let you know they were at least entertaining the idea of that. They obviously brought in a lot of quarterbacks, so there was that to kind of go off of, and I didn't find it any more challenging than normal from the Blues Clues perspective that we usually try to go off of.
The thing I got thrown off by the most was Zach Azzani at all those pro days. 4 of them if you count Pitt, and that usually signals they're going to draft the position. They did not do that, obviously, this year. And with safety, while they showed interest in those top safeties at those pro day workouts, to your point, Dave, they only brought in 1 for a visit. That was Nakeem and Worry. So typically, if they're going to draft a position, especially early, you're going to see multiple of that position group come in for a visit. May not all be first-round guys, but you're just going to see a heavy population, the way that there was at defensive line, the way that there was at running back this year with 9 and 8 respectively coming in for visits. So I don't know. We're still learning, obviously, but I think we have a good grasp of it overall.
Yeah, and how many of these guys might they circle back to in 4 years in free
Sure.
agency? Not all visits are designed to maybe draft a guy now because maybe they think that they're not going to have a shot at him, but they just want to get to know the guy, the player better, and for the chance that and when if these guys last and hit free agency, maybe they circle back to him. We've seen that a lot of times in the past where guys 4 or 5, 6 years into their career wind up being Steelers, and you can usually go back to the pre-draft visit list or pro day talks or something like that where they had association with that player.
Was Juan Thornhill one of those guys? I'm trying to think about the most recent examples.
Good
I don't
question.
know if Thornhill was. I know there have been other examples like Steven Nelson, like Landon Roberts, and probably others as well. So Mike Tomlin loves the glad hand and, work his way around the field during Senior Bowl. For example, there was that clip of him talking to the UCLA edge, which they probably knew they were not going to draft, but you just get to know the guy, have that conversation. DK Metcalf pointed out how much contact he had with Tomlin whenever he came out of Ole Miss, and they would talk before Steelers-Seahawks games, and that created some level of comfort when Metcalf wanted to be traded. Felt like Pittsburgh would have been a good fit so there's certainly a long game to Mike Tomlin's plan as well. Sean May says, why is it you guys believe they have not gotten rid of Cordo Patterson yet? Sign Nick Chubb. Okay, maybe the second part was wishful thinking. Dave, you've talked about this. Why is Cordo Patterson still on roster?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially on the heels of drafting Caleb and going out and signing Gainwell. And the only thing that I can really think of is they don't necessarily have to cut him just yet. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen before training camp gets underway. It's not like his salary's killing you right now. I mean, this team's got well over $30 million in salary cap space. They're fine. They're more than fine on cash spending. They need to spend a whole heck of a lot of cash between now and the start of the season anyway. It might just be because, it doesn't hurt to keep him around while you continue to evaluate other players. And nothing says that, once by the time training camp rolls around, he might be gone. So I kind of thought he would be out the door early, but I don't think they're hard pressed in a situation where they have to cut him just yet.
Right, there's no consequence to holding on to him for now, and so because the money's cheap overall, you want to get Gainwell in camp, see how he looks, see how Caleb Johnson, the rookie, looks, and maybe proceed from there. So could still happen in the spring, maybe after OTAs, and certainly no guarantee, and odds are looking fairly slim Patterson makes the 53. There's also a relationship with Arthur Smith, and so maybe Arthur Smith says, let's kind of hold on to this guy for a little bit. He can wear some hats for us, can do some different things, kick returner, running back, emergency receiver. That's a useful guy to have some flexibility for on your roster through the offseason.
Yeah, Arthur Smith just might like him too.
Yeah. There you go. Let's see. Joey Jr. says, actually, let's go to John first, and then we'll go to Joey. Arthur Smith, speaking of which, had a head coaching interview after a mediocre season in 2024. If the offense does well in 2025, is it presumptuous to believe he will have suitors again? I think he had 2 with the Bears and the Jets, although I think the Jets were the more serious one than Chicago, who was gunning for Ben Johnson the whole way. Yeah, if the offense does well, Smith will get looks. I think he's respected. He has a head coach background. He's a hard worker. So I think if the offense does well, Smith will continue to get more looks and maybe more serious looks in 2025, or at least I should say for 2026.
As Matt Canada used to say, got to score more points. If they can score a lot of points, that even the more serious looks he'll get.
Every couple of weeks, I search Matt Canada's name just on the off chance he got hired somewhere and it just got swept under the rug. I've yet to find it. Do you think he ever coaches again? The last time I asked you this was like right after he got fired, and you said, I don't care. But I just want to know, Dave, do you believe he'll ever coach again, Matt Canada?
He'll probably show up in college somewhere.
That's what I'm waiting for. He took a year off. I thought, okay, maybe he'll jump in for 2025, although we'd love to be the PR team for the college team that says, hey, guys, we hired Matt Canada, who was the most hated offensive coordinator in the NFL in 2023. So I don't know.
All I know is every year we'll probably celebrate the other Canada Day.
Yes.
the day that he was terminated.
It is kind of crazy if Canada doesn't coach again. The last 2 OCs prior to Arthur Smith may have their careers end in Pittsburgh. Randy Fichtner hasn't coached again. It doesn't sound like he's doing anything professionally or at the college level, and Matt Canada may follow suit there.
Yeah, possible.
All right, let's see. Joey Jr. says, Alex, number 20 goes to our new running back. Does that mean Cam Sutton is gone? God, I hope so. Cam is washed. Yeah, Caleb Johnson getting number 20. I would not expect Cam Sutton to be back. That was a mistake in the first place, and I think Pittsburgh sees that now.
He's one of the, 3 or 4 remaining unrestricted free agents from the Steelers this offseason that remain unsigned after the draft now, because the NFL releases that list every year after the draft of players that are made it all the way through free agency that were unrestricted free agents that are yet to be signed. And I think that list was like 3 or 4. Who else was on that list?
DeMonte Casey, Michael Pruitt, and I want to say there's one other name that I'm missing right now, but it is at least those 3.
Right, I'll find it here real quick.
Did you see the Baltimore signed Joseph Noteboom, too? That was one of the tackles I was looking at. Pittsburgh could sign post-draft, and he got scooped up over the weekend.
Okay.
So we'll see if Pittsburgh adds another veteran tackle. I'd like them to. Right now it is just Calvin Anderson, who is a veteran tackle, but sitting behind Broderick Jones and Troy Fautone. Of course, I have Dylan Cook as well, but would like a little more O-line help before training camp begins.
Tyler Matakevich is the other one.
There you go. Just talked about him earlier. B. Eric McDay. And 10 minutes left, so get your questions in last second. But B. Eric McDay says, Alex, you always seem so frustrated talking about 500-ish record the past 5 years or so since Ben. What changes would you have made during that time frame? Include coaches, player schemes. What's your win-loss? At least I believe that's what WL means in this case. I mean, it's hard to answer that in a live stream like this. I've talked about some things before. I mean, off the top, in terms of coaching staff changes this past year, I like Pat Meyer more than probably 95% of the fan base, but there was a worthy conversation to make a change there. They shouldn't have kept Matt Canada for the start of the 2023 season. They did that for continuity purposes, and that was always a mistake, and that obviously proved to be a very poor decision. And it's not even hindsight, but at the time, really came out against Pittsburgh allowing Kevin Colbert to basically run the 2022 offseason, free agency, and the draft, and then retire right after that, and then Omar Khan took over. I think it's a bad way of doing that. It puts the new GM at a disadvantage, not really allowing him to run his first offseason until 2023, and that 2022 class was not super, super strong, and of course had Kenny Pickett at the top, which I felt like Kevin Colbert felt like he had to give his successor a franchise quarterback, or the appearance of a franchise quarterback. I think that was mishandled. If you look at the way Baltimore, from Newsom to DaCosta, you look at Green Bay, from Ted Thompson to Gutekunst, those transitions were made in January to allow the successor to come in and start fresh for the start of a new offseason. So those are some things off the top. I think Pittsburgh made missteps along the way that help get them to where they're at right now, and people should be frustrated as well.
Yeah, I think you made some great points there, especially when it comes to the Omar Khan thing. Like, who was it? Bill Parcells said, if you, what did he say? You got to let me
to cook the meal, let me buy the groceries, something like that.
Yeah, let me buy the groceries and something along those lines.
Yeah, so just some quick hitters there. Could mention a whole lot more. I know hindsight is 2020. It's easy for me to play armchair general manager, but you asked the question and there's my answer. My record is nothing. It is NA. I do sit here in my office and get to be in the cheap seats and make these comments, but hey, that's what we're here for. That's what you guys listen to.
You're undefeated, Alex.
I am technically undefeated. That is technically correct, the best kind of correct. John Pennington says, hello, Dave and Alex. Do you think any of the players invited to the rookie minicamp will be signed, and how many? I think someone will. There are 2 or 3 open roster spots. I don't know who. I couldn't really tell you that. The team doesn't even know right now to get these guys in camp, but there's some interesting names. The offensive lineman from Lindenwood's interesting. Maybe Faulkner.
Debo Williams? Yeah,
I like Debo. Well, tough position group to crack, but there's some talent there. So, yeah, I think they usually sign 1 to 2 plus tryout guys. So we'll see, but I think somebody will.
Yeah, I agree. 1 or 2.
Aaron, any chance the Steelers sign a fullback? They could really use one. They tried with Kyle Juszczyk. He went back to San Francisco, but that undrafted free agent, DJ Thomas Jones, who got that $30K signing bonus, good money for Pittsburgh. Dave, I think he's got a good chance to make it.
Yeah, that's one to definitely watch here. And I haven't gone, I'm still working my way through the bottom end of the draft picks and all. But when I do get on him, when I get to the undrafted free agents, I think DJ is going to be the one that I dive deeper into. I've seen a lot of just basic plain highlight cut-ups of him, especially as a lead blocker, and it looks like there might be something there to work with.
Yeah, power lead blocker, not really used as a fullback or even an inline tight end. He was kind of a wing 2-point stance guy, so he'll have to play with his hand on the ground more. Has to help out on special teams. His background there is pretty limited overall, but he can catch a little bit too. Some earlier career stuff, some more vertical plays he made, has good hands, and is a pretty powerful run blocker. So I liked his tape out of South Alabama. And then Brian Jonker, kind of adjacent to that. Will we see Y.A. Black have a tryout at fullback? I don't think they'll be starting off with Black and getting fullback snaps in there.
I would be surprised if they did that, yeah.
Aaron Rodgers got married. Maybe. He's got a ring on his finger, but I will leave that for the tabloids to figure out.
Agreed.
Building 210, why do people not want to give Mason a chance? Did everyone forget the 3-game stretch, also beating Burrow and the Bungles? Don't think Burrow played in that game, right? That he was hurt that year. I believe Burrow did not play, and that was Browning, I want to say, played in that one, but somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I think Steeler fans have warmed up to Mason Rudolph. A lot of people have been in his camp, probably more so than Aaron Rodgers, so I'm not sure if the presumption or assessment that people don't want to give Rudolph a chance is correct. Pittsburgh may not want to, but I do understand pound for pound, Rodgers is the better quarterback than Mason Rudolph is right now.
Yeah, but if anything to hang your hat on, it was those final 3 games, right, where he had something like a 9-point-something adjusted net yards for passing attempt number within that span. So it was obviously the most exciting the offense had been that season. Yeah,
no question. He's given the best. Him and Russell Wilson, when Russell Wilson immediately took over from Justin Fields in that couple-week stretch before the losing began, those are the 2 guys that have played the best segments of football post-Ben's retirement, and so no question about that. But Rudolph, as you said earlier, Dave, is who he is, a really capable, competent number 2, spot starter, but not a guy that's going to materially change the outlook of a franchise in terms of getting this team over the hump, which has been their ultimate goal and ultimate obstacle.
Yep.
John says, have the Steelers invited any running backs to minicamp, or do you think the running back room is pretty much set with Warren, Johnson, and Gainwell? And who do you think does our kickoff and punt returns? Let's check on rookie minicamp running backs. They'll bring in some guys because, Warren's not eligible, Gainwell's not eligible, Patterson can't go. So they'll have some people there. Obviously, Caleb Johnson will be there. Any other running backs do we know?
It doesn't look like it, and obviously not all invites are reported. You'll get the last. We'll get the full list, obviously, right before the session starts, but it's usually like 8 or 10 guys that we didn't even have tracked that were never announced or anything. We can only find what's out there to find, and I think looking at the list, there are no running backs on here, so you'd have to imagine Caleb Johnson will obviously be there.
Probably 2 other guys will come in.
In Shampkin, is Shampkin still eligible?
I don't know who all would have eligibility. Evan Hull should have eligibility.
Yeah. Let me look at the
Shamklin,
roster real quick.
Would he be a first-year exception? That sounds correct. This was his first year playing in the NFL in terms of accrued seasons or being on a roster. Dressing.
And you can invite veterans too, right?
Yes,
a select few of veterans. So Jonathan Ward might be there.
Well, I was going to say Jonathan Ward was invited. They can't be on your roster currently. Ward was a free agent last year, invited. Okay. He wouldn't be eligible. He's under contract now. Yeah, but you can and have seen that, and Ward's a really good example of a veteran who caught a contract and stuck last year. From the list right now, Hollis Mathis played running back. He played everything at William & Mary. He played receiver, quarterback, finished up as a receiver, and then Max Herman played running back early at Colgate and then flipped to cornerback. He went to receiver at Colgate and then cornerback at Notre Dame, returner as well. I doubt those guys are running backs, but I just want to note they have running back backgrounds.
All right.
There's my nerding out on the Steelers tryout guys. Let's see, a couple more questions we'll get to. How many games before Johnson is running back 1? We'll see. I think Warren still starts the year top of the depth chart, but I think Johnson can certainly see a lot of early down work that's going to suit him well, Brian.
With all the schemes, running schemes that he played in, different running schemes at Iowa, and the fact that they used a lot of heavy personnel groupings with either 2 or 3 tight ends or a fullback in there, I imagine he's going to pick things up pretty quick. And I envision him getting some playing time right out of the chute. I'm with Alex. I think it's going to be heavy on Jaylen Warren out of the chute. But I could very well see the closer we get to mid-season, depending on how Caleb does pick things up, getting a larger and larger share of maybe some early down playing time.
Sure, no question about that. We'll see who does well, and if Johnson's the hot hand, they'll ride it because they need the run game to be strong this year. Mark Cunningham, this also kind of answers part 2 of John's question. Robert Woods used to return punts also, did he, guys? He did punts last year, maybe some kicks too. So he's 33, not often the first name that comes to mind for return work, although Pittsburgh had Patterson back there last year. We'll see. I mean, I think Calvin Austin, I don't know why he would come off of punt returns. He had success last season. Kick returns, though, Gainwell should be one of those guys. Maybe Woods, maybe somebody else emerges, but those are some options.
There you go.
Nico, Elliott extension this offseason, Deshaun Elliott. I welcome it, Dave.
Yeah, I welcome it. It's plausible. The cash says it can be done. The cap space says it can be done. The way the player played last year says it could potentially be done. So, yeah, I think the level of plausibility there is something that can't be overlooked.
Mike Adesso, Pens just went from almost winning the draft lottery to falling 2 spots to 11. The process is so dumb. Will the NFL ever move to a draft lottery system? Who knows? I wouldn't expect it.
The traditionalist in me hopes it doesn't.
Who else has... Is the NFL the only major American sport that does not have a lottery system? The NBA does. The NHL does. Didn't the MLB just institute a lottery, some sort of equivalent as well?
You would know more about that than I would.
I don't know. The MLB stuff gets a little complicated, and I'm not super well versed in their draft rules, but I think they just put in a lottery or something like a top 3 or like lottery created, and I don't know. Somebody knows more than me, I'm sure, about that, but I don't think the NFL has an appetite to do that anytime soon. Outside of Rodgers, what bigger name free agent might we target? I think offensive lineman. Noteboom's been a name I talked about, now off the market. Maybe George Fant, but there aren't a ton of big names out there to begin with.
What about the Browns tackle?
Jedrick Wills?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Could that be a potential guy that on a vet minimum contract?
It could be. He's probably the most talented tackle, but do you want Broderick Jones 2.0 on your roster right now? I don't really think it's helping you.
I mean, what's out there?
I know.
They do need another veteran guy there at least.
Yeah, Wills to me is like a malcontent former first round failure, and I like a Calvin Anderson, but better, with all due respect to Calvin Anderson.
Let's roll off some of the names real quick here, I guess. That's available.
George Fant, I believe, is still available.
Yeah, there's too many to go down the list here on, but I'll be surprised if they don't add another veteran of some sort here before training camp.
And people will call me crazy. I'm not banging the table for this, but Zach Banner, if that knee holds up, would he come in 1 year minimum contract, see how it looks to run third-team tackle in the summer? I won't rule it out.
All right.
He's doing his thing in the UFL right now. Any other final questions? Does Bruner have a legitimate chance to unseat Mark Robinson as a special teamer and linebacker on the 53, or is he destined for the practice?
I think he does.
I think he does too. It'll be a good battle.
I think he does.
And Elahan says, I think signing Sebastian Castro is going to end up to be more impactful than any pick post Caleb Johnson, but in a good way. So the most impactful day 3 or beyond pick or selection or acquisition in his mind is Sebastian Castro. I think there'll be some buzz about him this summer, Dave.
I talked about him ever since the Shrine Bowl, right?
And
the Shrine Bowl, the physicality, obviously he didn't test overly well. He can hit, though.
Yeah, he was just small and slow, and those guys fall out of the draft, but he played well for Iowa. And you talked about him on day 3 of the draft before those day 3 selections came in. You said him as a potential UDFA, and you nailed that one, Dave. All right, so we're going to wrap things up. Appreciate you guys being here. As always, our first live stream post 2025 NFL Draft. We'll have another one of these in 2 weeks from now. Dave, any final thoughts? As always, thank you for being here.
No, just thank you for moderating these as usual. Thank you for everybody that showed up. Thank you for the great questions. And I enjoyed doing this once again. And peace and love, everybody, and be safe.
You guys were fantastic tonight. There'll be a replay of this on the channel, and of course, also on SteelersDepot.com. So be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the site, as always, SteelersDepot.com. Have rookie minicamp this weekend. Should be a lot of fun. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon.